Hello, and a big welcome back to all my subscribers. And if you're not a subscriber, what's wrong with you? Press the button. Right, I want you to imagine being able to use calculus to play D&D. So this is merging two very different topics today. Now, I wanted to learn more about calculus, and more specifically, derivative and integral functions. And I was trying to come up with a little project that I could do which would help me to learn and improve on this. Now, I always learn better by doing stuff. And when I'm learning a new programming language or concept, for example, I try and just build some simple example project in that language. For example, my series on creating an emulator in Python, which I'm publishing at the moment. I'll put a link up here somewhere. Um, if you're interested in self-learning or becoming an autodidactic, which is a person who learns by themselves, you might be interested in listening to my podcast. Now, the podcast is called the Autodidactic Podcast, and it's available on most of the main podcast publishers, so Spotify or Apple or Google, etc. It's there. Now, for this calculus project, I thought up a little experiment where I would model the population of some kind of fictional population with some limited parameters. So I struck on the idea of modeling D&D monsters, or more specifically, monsters from Basic Fantasy, which is a game that's available online, and it's free, and it's open source, and you can download it. So my project outline was basically this: to design and set up a population growth model for a fictional tribe of kobolds inhabiting a cave complex. The modeling for this project serves a dual purpose, which was to explore the dynamics of the population growth and to gain practical understanding of the calculus application. So the kobolds face challenges such as limited amount of food, water, accidents, starvation, old age, sickness, and an essential male to female birth ratio. So to accomplish this, I needed to set up the model, define the parameters, and simulate the population dynamics over time. Now, the key parameters for this, the population exhibits several unique characteristics. So there's the birth rate. So each female has an average of 2.1 live births, with approximately 2 out of every 3 babies being female. So the birth rate can be calculated as 2.1 times 2/3. The initial population will begin with 5 males, 15 females, and no children. Their lifespan up 10 to 20 years and ready to reproduce at age 5. The resource constraints were I just put limited food and water available in the cave complex, and imposing a carrying capacity on the population, so they can't go more than they can eat. And then reproduction, at least one male is necessary for every 5 females. So one male can impregnate up to 5 females. So the modeling components were the population growth equation, which is a differential equation for the population of growth, which accounts for birth rates, death rates, accidents, starvation, old age, sickness, and the resource availability. And then the resource availability, to account for the resource dynamics, there's an equation to reflect the resource regeneration and consumption rate. And then the adjusted birth rate. So adjust the birth rate based on the resources and the male to female ratio, etc. And then an optimal male to female ratio equation to maintain this ratio and adjust the number of males. So that is the initial design that I sort of put together to work out. And then I set up this spreadsheet for my model, and I got the very basic stuff working for it. If we flip over to the screen, I have here the basicfantasy.org manual, and it talks about kobolds. Now, armor class and hit points and all that we don't really care about, but what was really interesting is here number appearing, and so in in a fight, there's 4d4 dice, but in their lair there is 6d10, which means there should be about 60 in the normal population. So that was the bit that I was mostly interested in, which was the number appearing in the lair. Now, this goes on to talk about kobolds and their lair and what they do and how many there are and all of that. And if you're interested in playing sort of D&D or whatever, I highly recommend that you have a look at basicfantasy.org. But that was sufficient amount of information for me to populate my spreadsheet. So my spreadsheet, I put in the basic parameters, some of which I'm using currently, but some of which I'm not. So this I've just fixed value, but in fact, it should be based on this equation here. But at the moment, I've just put in fixed amount of settings, some of which are used, some of which aren't. Now, the thing I've been working on mostly is the population growth. So this is the equation for the population growth. And in the spreadsheet, it's basically broken down to the initial population and then how much that initial population should grow based on the birth rate. And then the number of deaths for that population, and then how many have starved. So if the level is below the carrying capacity, which is currently food, I plan to do water as well, but I've just put food in there at the moment. So the maximum amount of population that can currently be carried is 100. And so if we go back here, when it goes over 100, everybody over 100, well, they die. And then the net population drops. And you can see that it stabilizes at 82, basically. So this was a sort of an interesting model, and you can play around. I can play around with the sort of parameters. You know, I can boost this to, 150, and then if we go back, well, it's adjusted, but it also hovers right around this mark. So I found it quite interesting how quickly it stabilized. Now, you would think kobolds, being intelligent creatures, would not breed so much that they're starving 132 of them, but then again, if you're writing a book, that would drive some behaviors. So, for example, backstabbing and survival of the fittest and, all that sort of stuff. But this is just a basic population model. Now, some of the things I really want to do is I want to work on the resource regeneration and consumption, which, I start and then do it over the number of years. I should be able to use this initial capacity, this initial carrying capacity, and work out the resource consumption rate and regeneration, and then the adjusted birth rate as well, based on because they as I said, they're intelligent creatures, so they're not really stupid, so they would work out that they can't keep, the adjusted birth rate would go down in order to avoid all of this starvation, you'd have thought. And then I'll probably, this is the optimal ratio of male to female, but I might bin that because it's not really interesting. But basically this is it. And to be honest, it's not really teaching me so much about the derivatives as I would like. And so I'm probably going to come up with another project, or attempt to anyway. But I mean, this is it's an interesting exercise, and it's something to play around with. If you like these sorts of videos, I do occasionally drop these ones in. Normally it's either language related or technology related, but honestly I have a lot of different varied interests, and I'm occasionally just going to drop something that I'm interested in, like math or brewing beer or whatever. So I hope you like these sorts of videos. Please, please, please subscribe and share these videos around if you like them. And I will see you next time.